Why do we fall? Why do we travel these lonely, dark roads of isolation in secrecy, knowing in our hearts that they lead to nowhere? We knew that God was our creator. He designed us to live in eternal harmony with Him and each other. But somewhere along the way, we didn't feel that harmony. Life got really tough and painful, maybe chronically painful. And we lost sight of ourselves and that relationship with God, our identity. So spurning God's fellowship, we began to sin. We began to slowly forfeit our created place and lose our spiritual lives as that sin became a lifestyle. I myself have personally defied God's law and rejected His love. Alienation from Him produced darkness and chaos in my life to a level which I almost didn't recover. I definitely didn't see a way out for a while, and I often blamed others. This is my story of the way out of that darkness and back into the light and fellowship with God and man and my family. There's a great moment in the movie Field of Dreams where Ray Kinsella is meeting with Moonlight Graham, Archibald Graham. And Moonlight's an old man at this point, and he's in his study, and they're talking about maybe Moonlight Graham coming back to get to achieve his dreams and play with his old heroes. And Ray Kinsella asked him, he said, what was it like to just play for that one inning and never get a chance to bat in the big leagues, because that was your dream? And he said, it was like having it this close to your dream and then watching it brush past you like a stranger in a crowd. But he also said later on in that same scene that it wasn't a tragedy. Because he went on and he lived his life, he became a doctor and he was respected in the community, and he loved taking kids to baseball games. But there's a period of pain when your dreams brush past you like a stranger in a crowd, whether it's not making it to the big leagues. I mean, for me, that's what it was. I get right to the cusp. I'm in a big league spring training game, and I've been hitting home runs and playing the best baseball I'd ever had, and hit another home run, rounding the bases. You lose all feeling in your leg, and that's the beginning of the end. A year later, you find yourself in a big city, chronic back pain, no money, and really no emotional energy because your identity is gone. All of that identity that was wrapped up for me in being that baseball player, I didn't have that anymore. The voice that I once valued in terms of singing and being able to do voices and the way that I connected with people socially on that level, that was gone due to a baseball injury hitting me in the throat. I got involved with a sales company, which was a pretty hard-charging, high-level sales job here in Atlanta. And for a while, everything was okay. But you begin to when you don't face the pain in your life, you begin to rely on crutches. And I began to rely on chemical crutches such as Adderall to help me have the stamina and the enthusiasm to get through a very difficult time. But with every up, there's a down. And as time wore on, and I'd spent 2 years in Atlanta, and I was building success by day, but at night, that emptiness, both from the Adderall wearing off, from the loss of things that I'd never fully worked through, there's just this depressing feeling inside. During those years of professional baseball, I had crutches then too, and one of those due to the loneliness of travel, being unmarried in my mid and late 20s, and having all that testosterone with no outlet. The nightlife and the women is not only the way that you gain companionship, or the way that I did, but it was also the way that I found male friendship. My teammates began to rally around me because I was the guy that knew where to go at night and to pick up the women, and it just began this long process of creating such a desire for novelty. But then bringing it back to Atlanta, I'd been here for a while, and things were tough, even though nobody knew it. That novelty was gone because you.
Hey, welcome to Truth Talk with Steve. Today I've got a guest, a great guy who I met just a few weeks back at a great event hosted by Clay Clark. And we got chatting before we split for the week after the few days. And, I just felt a connection after I heard kind of him talking because we have a lot of similarities to our past. So today we've got Jeremy Slayden. Thanks for your time, Jeremy. I appreciate you being here.
Man, I'm excited to be here, Steve. Thank you for tapping me on the shoulder and saying, come on the podcast after you overheard me. I appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure, man. I'm always just like you, we're always looking for good people that we can help, work together to make a difference. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And I got to say, man, I've gotten so much help from other people as I've stepped into this journey that we're both in right now. So again, thank you for helping me by having me on your show.
My pleasure. I hope this is just the very beginning of a lot of great stuff that we can do together and support each other and where God, I guess, steers us really,
That's right. Absolutely.
So let's, I grew up playing baseball in high school. I have 4 boys. They were all good, very good high school players. None of them pursued anything after that. But it was actually one of my boys was with me at that event. And he originally heard someone talking to you first and said something about baseball. And I said, I got to talk to him. I said, first thing I said is he looks like a baseball player,
Yeah. And well, actually,
so,
Clay Clark gave me a nice plug earlier that day. I think he said, "Now my friend Jeremy over there, I think he was trying to help me out because
That's right. Him, that is right.
Yeah, and he said, "Now he played how many years, Jeremy? 7 years for the Phillies." He said 10 years, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." It was 7.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, so we chatted. We didn't spend a ton of time because the event had just ended, and we were heading off to catch a plane that night. But so let's talk a little bit about, your experience with drugs to whatever degree you want. I mean, I think we're very similar in some ways. We're very kind of open about our pasts and because I think we're secure with who we are now. And that's been part of our journey. Don't let me put words in your mouth, but I think we discussed that a little bit, but, to whatever degree you're comfortable or feel would, help others. What was it that kind of you got into drugs or the things that you did with your addiction or alcohol?
And it wasn't even so much drugs or alcohol.
That's right. I remember now.
It was more along the embarrassing line of sexual addiction, living in this fantasy land of lust. And, that's all available as you're climbing the ladder in anything, whether it's business, whether it's sports, music, anything where there's a lot of eyes on you. If you start to have a measure of success, not only do you don't have to go look for it anymore. It comes to you. Especially if you got a little money in the pocket, which is kind of a good thing. I never got a whole lot of money because it's the root of all evil, right?
Yeah.
And there's actually, it was my dad that said this a long time ago. He said, money makes you more of what you already are, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And a lot of times it's shades of gray,
Exactly.
But, yeah. So to answer your question, going back, I'd always, as a kid growing up in the 90s, you get the America Online discs and all that. And I would bore people to tell that story, but basically you see pornography for the first time and man, in some people that lights a real fire and other people, it's like, oh yeah, beautiful women naked. That's great. And then they kind of move on. There's other people that are more wired like me where it's, you see a naked woman, man, you can't stop thinking about it for like days and days and days. Well, you fast forward that several years through life, the baggage of life, the difficulties of, it wasn't just an easy ride for me through college and then through, the professional ranks as I climbed the ladder. I had a lot of injuries and I was a Christian guy. I was definitely trying to do it right. And there were times where, I was really close to the Lord and I was, I think, where I should have been. There were other times where I was just kind of sick of the battle and I just wanted to do my own thing. But what that does in a Christian's life is it creates this kind of need for secrecy. Like we've got this image now. If I'm gonna, live a life that is full of pressure, and I want to live up to what I think in myself. I want to live up to what my family and my church and my high school and all those people think I should achieve. Well, that's hard. Baseball is a game of failure. So, even if you do great,
you're life's a game of failure.
Yeah. So even if you do great in baseball, you're succeeding 300%. 30% of the time, 30% of the time. That's a 300 batting average, which is a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah.
Well, that's still that's failing. Like you said, 70% of the time that gets difficult. So, a lot of times people form these places they run to, whether that be drugs, alcohol, women, whatever. And my draw was always, women, especially as I got to, experience the pro life and you're traveling and all this stuff. And I didn't want to be that kind of guy. It's not like, man, this is who I want to be, is some kind of womanizer, playboy, whatever. And a lot of times I wouldn't be that, but then it was my escape to go be that. And I could do it anonymously because I was not a big league player. I was a minor league player. So you're going town to town, you've been working out, you're in good shape, you're in the prime of your life. And then you can go out and have fun with the guys. And a caveat to all that is, as a high school athlete and even as a college athlete, I was not the most socially accepted guy because of my Christian lifestyle and choices. I wasn't going out and, I wasn't the guy starting the party. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I might
Yeah.
tag along or whatever, but I wasn't a big drinker. And I just kind of was always trying to manage that tension between, okay, I'm very connected to the Lord. I want to be, but also
Yeah.
I want to have a social life. And when you're at a Division I college and all this stuff, and you've got a big name as an athlete, unless you're just a Tim Tebow who's so outspoken and celebrated for your Christian faith, it's kind of a difficult tension to be in. And there's temptations.
It's almost a taboo in a way. It seems like, even though I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot of other guys who want to be the right, want to do good and do the right things, but it's not necessarily the cool thing,
That's,
that's a tough deal,
Yeah, it can be tough. So eventually there comes a point where if you don't have the right circle of people around you, or you don't have when you're practicing to, say, hit a curveball, there's a way to do that. You've got to practice at it. But a lot of times you have a coach and you've got all these people helping you learn how to hit a curveball, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's way more important things in life than how to hit a curveball. Like, how do you be a person of integrity? And a lot of times we go through all of our life and we don't have a coach for that. If our father or other people don't step in and do it. And it can just be a very tough thing. So we run to a lot of times to what's easy.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I did. And I find myself on the back end. And I always had this sense in the back of my mind that there's going to come a day where I'm going to pay for this. And I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I always knew, like, I've got to give this up at some point. Well, that day finally came, and, I find myself at the end of my career. It all happened in a moment. I was in big league spring training, and I almost get tired of telling this story, but it's an amazing story. I'm crushing the ball in big league camp, and it's like, man, this is finally going to happen. After all these years of work, I'm going to make the team.
Yeah.
I hit a home run. I'm rounding the bases. I feel fine. And, like, it's just this amazing euphoric experience. And I lose all feeling in my right leg as I'm rounding the bases. I don't know what's going on. I get to home plate, and I got a limp to the dugout. They take me to the training room. I'm out of the game. I don't play another game for, 60 days, and I'm back in the minors. And it was the beginning of the end. I mean, I played out the rest of the season in a lot of pain, but I was out of baseball after that, and ended up getting married. And then I've got this. I always had a passion for truth in my life. Okay, we talked a little bit about this off camera or pre-interview, and I always knew, like, hey, there's this cultural things going on in our world that are not good. They're not truthful. They're deceiving people. And now we're seeing the fruit of that today. But I'm talking back in 2006 to 2000, here more recently. So I'm watching all this develop, and I really wanted to step out, speak out, but instead, and I don't think this is a bad thing that I did, but I had no money, and I was like, I've got to take a job. I want to find a good job, and I'm going to start building up a bank account and all this. Well, I get into the sales world, and I end up, doing pretty darn well for myself. I've got a career now that I'm very proud of, but it was never my passion. And I think when you begin to, I gained way more money in business than I ever had as a minor league baseball player. Trust me on that. But, with that money and with that lifestyle that you don't love, there's always temptation. And I began to dabble my toes in the water of things and places and doing things I never, ever thought that I would do. Things that if you told me when I was 18 years old, hey, Jeremy, you're going to be a guy that's going to end up in strip clubs and massage parlors and all this stuff, even into your married life, I would have broke down in tears. I would have been like, there's no way that's who I'm going to be. But it's that slow fade. You give yourself away in little pieces. And then pretty soon you allow alcohol and you allow some other drugs. And that's another piece. I did allow alcohol and Adderall, that particular mix. I was diagnosed with ADD at an early age. But I never really got on any drugs until my business career. I went back to the doctor because I just thought, man, this is a lot of stuff to juggle between refinding my identity after baseball. And I just had that brain fog that you get, right?
Yeah.
And I thought maybe it's my ADD, and I don't know. And it is tough to make a huge identity transition in your life, because I was 29, almost 30 years old when baseball was over for me. So I went to the doctor. He prescribed the Adderall, and I began to get on that. And like all drugs, you develop a tolerance.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't long until I'm taking like, almost the maximum dosage every day. And God, I'm sure some of the listeners have experienced an Adderall crash. It happens at the end of every day. And you kind of just feel empty, like this vacated like hole in your chest. And it just sucks. It's coming off of a dopamine high, basically. And you want to fill that with something. Well, here I am, like I've been out doing sales all day on a high, doing good work I'm proud of. You get home and you feel this like vacant void inside of you. And it's like, man, I feel awful. Well, I don't want to take more Adderall because then I'd be, running out of my prescription too soon.
Right.
The only thing that would help soothe that, that I was willing to do was alcohol. But then you start drinking alcohol at nighttime. Sorry, hold on one second. And that's when you find yourself going places, doing things, and acting in ways you never expected that you would. So I know I talked a lot right there, but I'll give you a chance to.
That's good stuff because I've been on the Adderalls for years and years, and just recently, well, a couple of years that I just decided it's time to get everything out of my body. It doesn't matter what they say I need. As I've woken up and learned more and more, really a lot of it recently in the last 6 months and I've always had this belief that God didn't create this earth and create us without providing everything that we would need. Meaning, we don't need the drugs. I believe, and I truly, really believe it now, is everything we need to be healthy, to improve our health, the earth provides.
Yeah.
I believe that there are certain situations that there are certain drugs that are needed in certain situations. It's not like, and I'm not saying docs are quacks or anything like that. I'm just saying that we've been trained, and that system was created intentionally. The whole big pharma and all that, and the way they treat stuff is just to mask. They don't focus on what do we need to do to cure this. And that can take us down a whole bunch of other rabbit holes as far as where does disease come from and all that, due to all the garbage we put in our bodies, and all that stuff. But that crash is real. And when I was going through my addiction, my business, I was very functional, and my business was doing incredibly well. It's pretty much on autopilot, really. And that idle mind is the devil's playground, and that's what really got me to where I was, spending more time and energy focused on chasing pills, than I was anything else. And it gets to that point where you're just, like you said, I felt hollow. I got to the point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I mean, I remember days driving to work and literally just crying. Like I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know how to deal with getting off the stuff or how to the support systems. It wasn't as open and talked about as it is today, with the opiate crisis and all that stuff. But, it's not fun. But I believe, we go, we have a path in our lives that's meant for us, and that it's just, what do we do with it? How do we learn from it? As we talked before, it's so much easier if we have people in our lives that we can, talk to, relate to, and go to for help. And life's so much easier when we're together. That's what that event at Clay's really, really hit me hard, of just how much easier life is when we work together,
That was a huge part of my recovery. The beautiful thing, and I think this is a great thing to be able to say on your show, is I was actually kind of racking my brain when I got the reminder, hey, in 30 minutes, we've got this show together. I was like, gosh, okay, addiction, recovery, man, do I need to like open up my old journals to go back and figure out like where I was at so I can say really relevant things? The beauty is I have to rack my brain now to remember what that life was like.
And that's awesome.
So there is a way out there, but it's like it says in the Bible, those who seek me will find me when they seek me with all of their heart, not just part of it. And that's, and not just today either. It's over a process of time. And I would say my process out of it, when I was really in that place of seeking with all my heart, it was a 3-year, maybe 4-year ordeal. And I had to give up every single piece of the secrets that I was holding. I had to sit down with my wife, with a counselor, and talk through these various scenarios where I had cheated, and, watch her break down, and then live in that dark place for months and months and months of climbing out of the hole. Now I can happily
Taking
say
years to earn that trust back. When you
yes,
break that
but
trust.
well, and it's been a few years. I'll never. It was
Yep.
November 6th of 2018. That was D-Day,
Really?
Disclosure Day. And since that time, life has completely changed. I get to look in the mirror and be proud of the man that I am today. I get to look at my boys and experience like the joy of being a father. I find my wife more beautiful right now than the day we married. And I remember back then in this just mental funk that I was in, I couldn't really see her beauty because it was all tied up into this like fantasy world. And it was just ridiculous. And I'm so ashamed that I was in that place, but I allowed myself over a period of time to go there. And the crazy thing about Satan, the way he deceives us, when you're in that place, you really do get to a place where you blame other people. And there can be other people that have pushed you in a bad direction. And there's circumstances that are tough. We've all had difficult things in our life, but at the end of the day, the buck really did stop with me. And that's why I had to cough up those bucks and hand them over and say, hey, this is where I've been. But I think that was the day that God pulled out that final diseased tree and ripped it out of the ground and put in a new seed and let it grow.
That was 3 years ago, coming up tomorrow. Or
my God, yeah, 2 days.
Dude,
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that.
You said the most powerful thing there to me, like my hair was standing up in my whole body. It's because I think so many people, and I did this for most of my life, even though I owned it, I wasn't allowing myself to be free like you by sitting down and being open and owning it. You know what I mean? Because
telling other people.
Yeah. I told some friends a little bit here and there, but until I got to the point where my wife knew, my kids knew, I was never free until then.
Yeah.
And so what you did, to me, that's probably the most powerful thing that maybe we'll talk about today is taking that most difficult step.
Yeah.
But
and doing it in the right. Yeah. And I want to say this to the whole audience. If you're in that place, and especially when it comes to sex, lust, pornography type addiction, but even with the other addictions, and this will provide a little bit of a cushion for these people as well. It's not something you need to say, you know what, I got to get this off my chest. When she comes home today, we're talking about it. No, this I was led up to this. I was led to a point of personal health with a counselor, with a group called the Samson Society, which is men who are just ready to tell the truth with each other.
That's awesome.
Over the course of 2 years, which if you've not heard, you can go to samsonsociety.org and learn about that. But you can join a group like this. And I still have there's and then you have Silas's. That's like your accountability partnerships.
Oh, that's cool.
But I've still got a Silas to this day, an old football player who's now a pastor in Florida. It's really cool. But anyhow,
that's right on.
But leading up to that D-Day, that Disclosure Day, was a process of me getting personally healthy so that when I was able to have the strength to tell the truth, it was coming from a place of actual, like, okay, I've built this bridge now and it's pretty strong. So I can actually walk across this bridge and tell the truth. But if you try to tell the truth and that bridge is really shaky, like in the Indiana Jones movie, man, and the ropes are splitting apart, man, you're going to be flying against the cliff wall real quick because you're going to go back to your addiction because it's going to hurt.
Exactly.
And the only place you're going to know where to turn is where your brain says, that dopamine says, oh gosh, this sucks, I've got to go back. That will happen. And I've seen more men lose their marriages because they came clean and they were not ready. So that's a little bit of a cushion of comfort. Is you need to take some time, I think, to get to a place of health before you take that step. And I'll say one more thing. I asked 12 different men. I asked 12 different men prior to the disclosure whether I should tell my wife, Sarah. It was split right down the middle. And these are all men that I respect. Yeah. But
because some I'm guessing are taking that attitude of, what you don't know don't hurt her, as long as you're, doing the right thing moving forward. Is that kind of what their thinking is, or?
It was 6 different guys. It was 6 different guys said don't do it. So it's probably all coming from a slightly different place. But these are I think all of them were Christian, godly men who have wisdom. But I think they probably either didn't come clean in their own life and they didn't know what it really looked like, would be number one. So they held on, or they'd come clean in the wrong way and went back and they lost their marriage. That actually did happen to some of them. So they just couldn't
So they
envision.
felt like it wasn't worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, and I didn't just have to go to men. I also went to God, and I knew in my heart, and I finally called my counselor who I'd been with for 2 years at that point. I said, man, I really think I'm at the place I need to do this, but I'm so scared. He said, well, Jeremy, you are at a place where you can do it, but here's what you have to decide. Do you want to have a real marriage, like a real one?
Bam.
Because for her to really love you, she's got to know exactly who you are. And until she knows who you are, she can't really love you for you.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm here to tell you about my new product from MyPillow. Towels that actually work. Watch this absorbency test. Here's another towel that we randomly went out and bought. Here's one of my towels with the nice design. I don't know if you can see this, but you could line a swimming pool with this. This is crazy. Get rid of it. Towels that actually work.
The new MyPillow towels are exclusively made with 100% USA combed cotton with proprietary technology and with maximum absorbency. They dry you faster and are guaranteed to work.
I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow. And to thank you for all your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. Go to MyPillow.com to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you get my dog beds for as low as $19.99, or for a limited time, you can get my 6-piece towel sets, regularly $109.99, now only $39.99. The lowest price ever with your promo code.
I mean, that says it right there.
Yeah.
You know, that's true. Because I really believe, you know, a lot of relationships, and I'm not trying to judge, I'm just going off of my life experience and how I was, you know, and I think I can always improve for sure. I'm far from, you know, where I think is fantastic. I'm definitely happy and comfortable and think I have an honest marriage. But I hid stuff for a long, long time. And, you know, I wasn't sure, just like you. But what it comes down to, like you said, is I think the best person to ask is God, you know?
Yeah.
And
You'll know down in your gut.
Did and doing exactly. Yeah.
I knew way back, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but like even when I first started the road of recovery, and I don't mean just like having an accountability partner that kind of fell flat after a few months. I'm talking about seeking with all my heart to get well. I knew when that process started that there was going to be a D-Day down the road if I really wanted a real life and a real marriage. But I wanted to push that sucker back as far as I could. You know? But I think God had told me way back when this is in your future, and we're just on a path to get there. And so I was walking toward a path that I didn't want to come true, but yet I wanted it more than anything. So I think God had already answered what I needed to do. The men split in two, and then I had to go back to God and to my counselor at the end and say, you know, hey guys, God and my counselor Monty, what do you think? And I think God just said, you know where I've always stood, you know?
Wow. I actually, you know, it's interesting, and I'll make this quick, but it relates so much because my wife was a nurse for 30 years. She just retired this last year, quit whatever. And you know, she worked part-time and stuff in the office that she worked at. If anyone came in there with addiction issues or whatever, she'd always have them reach out to me, you know, which I appreciated because that's stuff I love to do. But if I ever had issues, this was, you know, years and years ago, because I did have one small relapse, and I always wanted her to be that person I could talk to prior to, you know, just the fact that I was having thoughts and whatever they were. But I always got treated differently, and this isn't to blame her because it's 100% me. I mean, my old addiction, I've learned that everything I have in my life, to this point in my life, everything I have is 100% based from choices I made. Nobody else forced me to do anything. And once I learned to take that extreme accountability, you know, life got a lot better, a lot easier. But so I was so afraid because she always treated me different, like the loser, like, how could you do that?
Yeah.
And then at the office, it's totally different. It's compassion, understanding, and, you know, and she was educated. She went through the outpatient program when I got clean in 2000. And so that always drove me crazy. And so I was looking for a way to do what you're talking about. but was scared to death forever because I had also put her through a lot of crap through the addiction. And so I was making excuses, honestly. And, I had been praying about it for a long time, and I'd had knee surgery, and I was just taking Suboxone, and I ended up taking, I got an extra prescription that I was able to get. She didn't know about. And so I'm taking that. And then I contacted a doctor that helped me back in 2000 when I got clean, and reached out to him to say, hey, this is where I'm going. I don't want to go down this path. I need to come and talk with you, figure out how to manage this situation. And, but I got to pay cash because I don't want my wife to know, all those stupid things. And I had hidden the prescription in my golf bag in the trunk of my car.
Yeah.
and I know this all relates with all those out there and you, that with the dumb things we do. Well, she had come out one day when I was in my trunk, but I had a bag of golf balls and they had actually been rolling around. And so she just happened to come out like to throw something in the trash in the garage. And anyway, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just getting these out because they roll around when I'm driving and I forget they're here. And anyway, for whatever reason, the next morning when I got up, came downstairs somehow, and she's not the type to snoop, I have a brother whose wife's really like that. She's not the RoboCop on me. She's just not, that's not who she is. But for some reason, she felt prompted to go check later. Mm-hmm. So when I came down to go to work that next morning, she's sitting on the couch and she holds up that bottle and said, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And that's when the disclosure came. So, I really respect what you did. And I think it comes in different ways, but I think it's one of the most important things at the right time, like you say, and we have to be in a place. And I actually had done a lot of work, even though I'd kind of tripped up there. But I knew I'd done enough work. I knew that's not what I wanted. It's not where I wanted to go. So I was trying to, get that help.
Yeah. And I think what happened it was a nudging towards something that your relationship probably was ready for and needed.
Exactly. And
versus
I think both of us had our issues on how to address it. And so it was forced, whether I believe God's hand was in that, because when that happened and the things that I was able to let go of and be honest with her made her it just changed. It's like words. Honestly, there wasn't a lot spoken after that for a couple of days, as far as, it's not like we had silence, but as far as that. And then when we did, it was like, we both had a totally different perspective and understanding that made it just, all of a sudden we were both free, and it was wild. But it was beautiful,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so things do happen in different ways. So as you when you talked about the baseball career ending and losing your identity, that's real stuff. I've been through that. I remember my dad mentioning that when he retired as a dentist, and I didn't get it when he said, I kind of don't know who I am now that I'm not Dr. Cloward. And, when I came out of prison, I was a successful real estate appraiser and developer. And it's like, all of a sudden I have nothing. And so I think as men, that can really be a trigger if you go through something like that, to fill that void with something that's not healthy, whether it's addiction of any sort. And so it's important that, we learn about those things. I think the best thing that I've been able to do is learn from others about how to always work on me, even when I feel like life's good and that I'm healthy, and I don't know. I just feel like if we constantly are trying to improve on the inside and really my relationship with the Lord, frankly, I don't know if I mentioned to you or not, but I grew up Mormon and I've kind of awoken to that the last couple of years too. And I was talking to my wife today. I had to help her do a Costco run. And as we were talking, somehow this came up, and as I've been down this truth path and learning of the things that have been hidden from us and really what's going on and all the evil that really permeates our entire world, from whether it's schools to the government to, you name it, to sports and celebrity and all that stuff. It's in every part of our lives. And, it's just really been for me the last year that connection is, and I'm not dogging churches, I believe there's some great things in them, and I believe there's some great people, that have great churches. But that one-to-one connection with the Lord, to me, is what it's all about, and it's really, that's an inside job in the heart. And it's, how do you, it's connecting that mind and that heart, because too often I think as human beings, we're always using the head. Have you had experience that way, or what's your take on kind of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot I could say there. One thing, this may be a side trail to what you're talking about when you're saying you're not dogging on the church. You're talking about all the evils in the world. These big, just overarching thematic evils, and kind of like when Jesus said, it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom than it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. Basically saying it's very hard.
Yep.
I don't think he was just talking about monetary wealth. I think he was talking about great looks. I think he was talking about extreme intelligence. Those people that get to the top based on their abilities. Man, Satan is after those people like no one else, because if he controls them, and
exactly,
they become our human gods.
they're the idols. Yep.
And what the church has done a great job of is helping the hurting in a sense, like, if somebody's coming and they're just in a bad place and they're looking for the Lord, man, the church is going to help them find it. The church has done a horrible job, I think, at helping people or knowing how to deal with true evil that cares nothing about the Lord. That's why you see, half the churches not knowing who to vote for and steering people towards these kind of nebulous ideas of justice when the Bible's very clear on what justice is.
Yeah, we're not being bold about what is God saying to you if, you're a pastor or you're the prophet of the Mormon Church about a vaccine. Why are you taking a stand if you're, to me, that's an issue.
Yeah, it all is. I just think that the church needs to wake up in a bigger way. It's happening a little bit, but in a bigger way, where they're like, hey, there's a big group of people out there that care nothing about our Lord and are looking to take control of our kids, our schools, all this stuff. We got to stand up against that. And, for me, we talked about this a little bit before the interview. My personal drive toward truth in my own life, it drives me toward truth in culture. That's why I'm leaving my job in 6 days. I mean, I'm gonna leave a 10-year career full time to step into the fight for freedom. And really, I mean, personally, I've got 3 pillars to it. It's one is fighting the culture war, which I just call fight for freedom at this point. 2 is maximizing personal performance, and 3 is overcoming grief, loss, addiction. That world, which is kind of what we're talking about. Well, a lot of people say, well, you can't do all 3. You can't do those are 2 disparate ideas. Well, maybe, but I kind of think that truth is
together,
extremely connected, because if you don't have the truth about who you are, and you're not really,
you don't even have the foundation. Yeah,
you have no foundation to solve your own problems, right? You got to get really honest.
Right.
2, if you want to be a great ball player, great singer, whatever, you've got to actually know exactly not only about your craft, but about where do I stand right now in this world of baseball? What am I good at? What am I not? For me, it was baseball. And then 3, what was the third? The addiction stuff. That goes without saying. I'm sorry, the culture stuff. Yeah, if we've got problems in society, and that's why these deep dives into, hey, what's going on in the medical industry, really? Who's behind that? Why are the prescription drugs being pushed on us? Well, you got to understand what's going on. I think in Psalms, it says, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but it is to the glory of a king to search the matter out. I think that's a psalm or a proverb, but the wording I've got
sounds good, brother.
Yeah, and I think that we all need to seek to be kings right now, because there's a lot of mystery, a lot of shady stuff going on.
Oh, man.
But if you seek, you will find right now. And I think you and I and a guy like Clay Clark has definitely come to the awareness of that.
Oh boy, I'll say, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's not easy. I've gotten to the point where there's not a whole lot that would surprise me, even though I know down the road, I believe everything will get revealed eventually. And I guarantee there'll be some things that shock the hell out of me. But, I've never enjoyed school. I've just, my mind was always all over, and, I've always done my own thing. But I'll tell you what, when I first started to learn about this stuff, man, it just grabbed me, it just pulled me in, and I wanted more, because I wanted to find out what, if, I don't know, I just feel like we have been created with so much power and ability that has been stifled and hidden from us, that it's crazy. And as we unite and as we all awaken it, I mean, I feel like just really in the last even month or two, I've felt things kind of shift. I don't know if the tide's turned yet. I believe it will, because I think this is 100% a fight between good and evil. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. It's
And,
not, this is not a Republican Democrat thing. And that's where the church goes with all this. It's like, well, you're being political. This, they'd say, I agree with you about good. There's a fight between good and evil, but you're being political. That's like, no, what's going on right now in our world is playing itself out on a political stage, but
that's right.
It is good and evil straight up.
And that whole, political, you're being political and left and right. That's all part of the enemy's plan, because division, that's one of the best weapons. And I believe we are all so much alike versus the little things that we do differ on, that if we could get rid of the stuff that's being jammed in our face 24/7, trying to tell us, how bad that side thinks versus this side, it's really just, it's been manufactured,
Well, and I may disagree with you a little bit on that. I think there's a lot of people out there that do want critical race theory taught in our schools, and they do want abortion on demand. And
there's people like that for sure.
Yeah. So I think there is a great divide there. But what we've got to do is there's a big sleeping middle. And I think that's what you're doing. This sleeping middle that kind of doesn't know what's going on. It's like, I'll get the booster. They are more alike with where we're at than they think or than they know. They just haven't awoken yet. And that's my mission, is to wake up that sleeping middle, because there is a dark side out there, for lack of a better term, on the progressive, progressing toward what? What are you progressing toward?
And I believe that's where the whole, Satan comes in too, because, to me, that is going the other direction.
Yeah.
And there is a division between that and, God and Satan, and so just like in the church, some churches, I believe, have been influenced by Satan and, are being led astray and in apostasy, so to speak.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that the church, it can mean, I think Satan
it has nothing to do with the church itself, the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Right. And I think the devil takes what he can get. I think there's certain churches that, man, they're a good Bible believing church, but in one or two categories, they're just wrong. And that's because, the devil got his talons and he cracked the door open in that little area. So it's not all just like, well, that's a bad church, that's a good church.
I agree with that 100%.
It's a sliding scale,
And we're all just men of flesh. So, I mean, we're all going to, we're making mistakes, obviously, and that's part of it too.
Yeah.
I think,
no doubt. And hey, I mean, and who am I to I'm not casting stones at all these churches. If I was leading a church, there would be areas where I was deceived too. So I don't want anybody to watch this thing, man, who does this guy think he is?
Yeah, no. And I think that's good that we're both clear on that, because I agree with that too. And it doesn't, there's way more good than bad, I believe, but once again, there's men that I had always looked up to in my church, growing up, that the one thing that I always told other people when because I felt like I really had this great, strong testimony. I was kind of a closet guy in a sense, meaning, I always had pride really that was getting in between me and the Lord, to be honest with you. And say that, someone in a higher position committed adultery, that never really shook me, because that's just a man. Because he's in a position makes it no different than the rest of us, and I just think that's just how we have to look at it. I mean, we're all just here doing our best, and it doesn't matter how hard we try. We're all going to make mistakes, and I'm certainly going to make a whole bunch more. I'm just doing my best to get better and acknowledge them when they happen too. That's the one thing I try to do, is if I make a mistake or hurt someone's feelings, I want to be aware of it, so I can go say I'm sorry, or I can go to the Lord and say, man, I did this, and I know better, and forgive me.
Yeah. And I think that's the key is if your heart's in the right place, you're going to be that kind of person who, hey, even though like you admitted, you said, hey, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes in the future. Yeah, we all are. But if your heart's in the right place, you're generally going to be driving toward love, truth, and goodness. If your heart is, and my heart's been in the wrong place before, even as a Christian, where I was running toward everything that was going to steal, kill, and destroy for a temporary pleasure, and it's a very real thing. So that's why
But you always had it inside of you, because it sounds like to me, was that something that because of the way you were raised with your family, that you had?
No,
that instilled in you?
I was definitely a believing Christian who was saved and transformed in my heart. But I think even Christians can come to a place when, like I said, you give yourself away in little pieces, and you can become deceived. You can become deceived, addicted,
absolutely.
Messed up as a Christian. And I got to that point, never thinking that I would. But the underlying, I was never going to be comfortable in that.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Sense that was there. And so even though you did have some struggles like we all do, you still had that inside of you that was always kind of there, back of your mind.
Well,
it was knew what you were doing.
It was going to drive. It was going to make me an absolutely miserable person. And I think that's the tough thing is the difference in a person who has Christ truly inside of them versus one who doesn't. The person that's got Christ in them, when they're mired in sin or addiction of any kind, they cannot get comfortable. And a lot of times it drives them back to the bottle or whatever because they don't want to feel the feelings that they feel.
Exactly.
But if you don't have that in you, there may be some kind of common grace thing where you kind of know what you're doing is wrong, but you can become so numb to it that I think your whole life can be about just chasing the dragon, whatever it is.
For sure. Yeah.
With much less guilt and much more comfort about it.
Yeah. There's no doubt drugs did that for me for a long time, And I mean, like you, I did have it deep down, but anytime that I did kind of have it creep up when I felt sort of any guilt, that's when I would just turn to more, just keep using to kind of numb myself from it,
Yeah, right.
So,
but I mean, what I would love to tell your audience or anybody else is there's true hope. I mean, what I said earlier about, man, I had to kind of rack my brain for where was I at 4, 5, 6 years ago. It wasn't easy to get to this place where I don't have these thoughts as I'm driving down the road of looking for some shady, place to go act out, I remember used to every time like I got in my car, it was in the back of my head. And it is a wonderful, wonderful thing to not be there anymore, but it's going to take all of you to get out of that place with God's help. And you probably won't be able to do it alone. So I recommend finding a group, whether that's Samson Society, Celebrate Recovery. There's lots of those kind of groups out there that can help you, but also personal counseling, I think, was a no-brainer for me. Yeah.
So now that you're leaving your job in 6 days or whatever, and you're heading down your new course, the path that I think that is, your calling, what you truly can be passionate about, what does that look like? And, who can, where do people find you that maybe can, looking for some help?
Yeah, thank you. So JSlay USA is the name of the brand. So back in baseball, people called me Jay or JSlay because Jeremy Slayden.
It's a good little.
So, you can find me at jslayusa.com, or I love my Instagram right now. I'm not getting censored too badly on there. Occasionally I will. Facebook's terrible. But it's big time. Instagram, Telegram.
To get kicked out for 2 months and I haven't.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah. And if you go down that rabbit trail, you fight a fight you probably can't win. Right. Instagram, Telegram, Rumble are all great places to follow my content, and also the website. I'd love for people to sign up for the newsletter. But yeah, I'm leaving in 6 days, and my first gig is the day after I leave. It's called Give Thanks for Freedom, and it's in White House, Tennessee. We're having communist survivors, people who've escaped totalitarian Australia recently.
Wow.
We're having a woman who was under the influence of the CIA's MK Ultra mind control program. So there's quite a few really cool speakers that are going to be there. I've met almost all of them at this point, as well as one of the people running for governor for Tennessee. We've snagged him. So it should be a fun event, and it gives me something to look forward to the day after I leave my job.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Hit the ground running.
Yeah. I'll send you the flyer. Maybe you can kind of throw it up real quick in case there's some Tennessee listeners. Yeah, send it, and I'll have them edit it in. So as far as JSlay USA, down, as you start building that out,
what does that look like? You helping people one-on-one, or what is?
No,
what
not so much.
exactly?
You know, right now it's just a platform of influence. I'm interviewing people. I'm doing a lot of what
Gotcha.
you're doing. I love digging into things kind of the way you described about getting to the heart of the matter, getting to the truth, whether it's with a person where I've got good questions for, or whether it's in terms of the medical industry or the World Economic Forum or what's really going on. And I like to share that kind of information in a fun, sometimes funny way, sometimes dramatic way, putting music to it. But
That's cool.
you again, go to the Instagram and you'll see kind of what I'm doing now. But I'm running on about 20% of my best because I've got my full-time day job of roofing sales. As soon as I leave and get to cut this tie, I'm going to get to put together a business plan and all this stuff. But if nothing else, please come to my page out of pity, because I'm going to be taking no income for a couple months until I put this together. So, but yeah, I'm talking to investors and different things. We'll see what happens.
Right on. Well, that's fantastic, man. I'm excited, and anything I can do to support you, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll do anything I can. And
you have a Venmo? You got a Venmo?
Heck yeah, brother. Well, no, do you have a Venmo?
That's your
Venmo.
Right.
Speaking of that, that's kind of ironic, because I don't know if you've ever heard Jason Frank speak. Have you heard of his name?
Maybe, but it doesn't ring a bell.
I saw he was on my last podcast. Actually, he was cruising through, I-15 in Utah. So Tuesday he stopped in. We did it live, but I saw him on David Nino Rodriguez's show, and Rodriguez just brought up his Venmo for some reason, and he had just spoken down at the Patriot Double Down, I think, in Vegas, and as far as this Jason Frank, he's really fighting for the kids. That's really what he's passionate about. And he's got a heart of gold, and he's got a background of addiction and prison 3 times. And,
wow.
And just a great guy. And so he stopped in, but anyway, so David gives out his Venmo, and I just thought, I'm just going to send him a few bucks. I'm sending him like $30. And I thought, you know what, I got to talk to that guy. So I shot him a message. Dude, he called me within an hour, and 5 days later, he's on my show.
Wow.
So
it's cool.
It was cool, and it's like one of those just things that just worked in a mysterious way that, meant to be, I feel like. But yeah, anyways, so
that's great for me to know, because, as I step into this world, kind of like, right now in commercial roofing sales, to call a big account, it's a little scary, Well, for me to call, a Candace Owens or a Ben Shapiro, and I say their names because they're both in Nashville and I'm right here in Franklin. So I've got, close access at this point. But to call a big name is scary, but God is connecting so many dots for me already. And a lot of times I forget, these amazing marking points. I'll give you a quick one. So I've now been with my roofing company for a decade. Okay. And I've done very well with them. They're glad to have me, all this stuff. So to tell my manager that I was leaving to go, fight for freedom, basically with an Instagram account and a little website, which he had gotten wise to, by the way. We were having a dinner at this nice swanky steakhouse, and he goes, "So tell me about JSlay USA." And I was kind of like, "Oh shit,"
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yeah. And I had planned in my heart to tell him that night, but I didn't think he knew about it.
He brought that up first.
He brought it up, and he said, "Man, I watched your Father's Day special where you talked to your dad. Like, I walked around the neighborhood on Father's Day for 2 hours watching like your dad." And so I knew, like, okay, this is a warm thing then. What turns out, like, he's got a daughter who's a Division I athlete in college sports. She won't take the vaccine, and they're basically like completely oppressing her and making her wear a mask in her dorm room and like all this just crazy stuff. And she won't take the vaccine for medical reasons. She's got some immunocompromised stuff that would be better for her, and she's already gotten COVID twice. So she's probably got great immunity, right? She's a college athlete at 20 years old. She ain't going to die. And she's got immunity, all this stuff. Well, anyhow, he had been experiencing that. They were thinking about pulling her out of the college. So he's fighting this battle with his daughter, who's, crying every day saying, maybe I should just take it. And it's like, no, daughter. Well, and he goes, "Jeremy, you've got my blessing. We need more people to do what you're doing. I'm with you 100%.
Wow,
go fight
awesome.
the fight." It's something I was scared about. And then he just jumps in and says, "We love it. Go do it." So it's neat how God does these things that you're worried about and makes it happen,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's great. I mean, I've had a lot of those kinds of experiences, and it, just shows we're doing the right thing. We just got to keep at it and,
That's right.
Continue to speak from the heart and continue to learn and share what we know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, appreciate it, brother. I'll have your information as well in the show notes, and we'll send me that flyer and I'll put that in there, and we'll
I'll send it to you.
stay in touch. I'd love to have you back, and
Thank you.
And,
I'd love to come back.
keep on doing what you're doing. But thanks again, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Hey, buddy, take care. Let's talk about preparedness. The team over at My Patriots Supply has been helping millions of people for the past 14 years. So make sure that you and your family are prepared in case of emergency. We've got a lot of things going on and troubled waters are ahead. So don't get caught, where you've got to rely on other people. Make sure that you've taken the steps to take care of you and your family. To save $50 off their 1 month supply, it gives you 2,000 calories a day. Just go to getpreparedwithsteve.com. That's getpreparedwithsteve.com. You'll save $50 by using the promo code TTWS.